All right, you came back. Why not, right? What else do we have to do? I laugh every time I start these videos because, like, it's a big picture of me and it flashes a 3, 2, 1, go. And it's very distracting and it makes me laugh. So, again, we're talking about the integumentary system. This is lecture 2. We just finished lecture 1, and if we had a class, we would spend 10 minutes reviewing what we covered in lecture 1 of the epidermis, which is the outermost layer of the skin, the 4 different cells, the Merkel cells, the Langerhans cells, the keratinocytes, and the melanocytes, what they do, and then the different layers, the stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, you know what I'm saying in my head, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, stratum basal. You want to know function of each of those layers. You want to know which ones are alive, which ones are living, which ones are not living. So, having said that, that was the gist of the last lecture. And now we're going to continue on with the dermis. So the dermis has where it's all at. The dermis has the fibers in it of collagen fibers and elastic fibers, giving your skin the pliability, making you be beautiful and unwrinkled. Must be nice. It has a lot more of the nervous system functions. You'll find hair follicles jettisoning into the dermis, and all sorts of stuff. So I think we're going to talk about some properties of the skin and the dermis system in this lecture. It'll probably be short, and then we'll do accessory organs in the next one, and then a few loose ends in lecture 4. So there'll be 4 lectures, but they won't all be very long. All right. So when we last left off, we were talking about the dermis, and I don't really have a lot to say. I just kind of rattled it off. There are 2 parts to the dermis. There is this, okay, so first I'm looking at this picture right here, okay? I'm not really looking at that picture. And when you see this really, really dark purpley cell, that is going to be the base. This is all epidermis. That dark purple cell layer is the stratum basal, the bottommost layer. So here we go, this, and that would be, if I'm looking at this picture, that would be this bottom layer. So I have the stratum basal, then I have the spinosum, the granulosum, the lucidum, and then I have the corneum on the outermost side, and that's all these flattened dead cells. Ugh. All right, but we're talking about the dermis, and the dermis has 2 regions. It has an uppermost papillary region, and then it's got all the rest in this reticular region. And the papillary region, claim to fame, is that it has these dermal papilla. Dermal papilla are what make your fingerprints. They're the source of fingerprints. Okay, and that's coming from the papillary region. And then in the reticular region, this is like your regular connective tissue. Oh, I forgot to mention that. The epidermis was stratified squamous. The dermis is connective tissue, and then down way far is going to be my hypodermis with my adipose tissue. And you know what? We need this adipose tissue. It's very important to insulate us and keep our body heat in. Otherwise, it'd be a problem. All right, so I'm looking at this hair. The above part here that would be sticking out is known as the shaft. And then I go down here. This is the hair root. And it's in its little housing called a hair follicle. And what you have attached to it are these lovely guys that are sebaceous glands. They are oil glands. So oil glands do not make it to the surface of the skin like sweat. Sweat glands had their own pore all the way to the surface, right? Be a little sweat gland here. I'm kind of having fun today with this. I find I'm much more creative and interested in talking in the morning than when I record lectures at night. I'm like, okay. So sweat glands will have a pore to the surface. I know we're going to talk about this in the next lecture, like I just said, but I'm talking about it now. So sweat glands dump their oil into the hair shaft. So if your hairs wiggle around a lot, like when you're sleeping, it's dumping more oil, and I should say me, I don't know, everyone's a little different. I wake up in the morning with very greasy hair because my head's moving, it's wiggling hair shafts, it's causing these sebaceous glands to dump a whole lot of oil, and hence I get some pretty nasty oily bedhead. All right, so dermis claim to fame. What else do I have in the dermis? I have all of the, oh, well, here we go. I guess we'll just look at this picture. Why not? The dermis has the papillary layer. Of course, it doesn't talk about the dermal papilla in here for its real claim to fame is the dermal papilla. Those projections making your fingerprints. I have some touch nerve endings. These are nerve endings. Sensory receptors. Let's get technical. That's a Olivia Newton-John song. It's not that. Let's get physical. I will find blood capillaries for the exchange of nutrients and waste. Now think about this. The epidermis has no blood supply, so it depends on these capillaries in the papillary layer to bring its nutrients, and then it's going to have to diffuse. Oh my gosh, diffusion's so slow. How are my skin cells alive? Diffuse to the epidermis. That is crazy to me. I have free nerve endings in the dermis for temperature. Warm and cold are different guys. Oh, itching too. Pain and itching. In the reticular layer, I'm a little lower. I'm going to have different types of cells, white blood cells, just regular generic cells. I will find more of my blood vessels, little mini arteries and veins. I will find some smooth muscle, okay, around the blood vessels. I don't know. And then we will see the hair follicles and glands. The glands that you have in your skin are oil glands. Fancy name for that is sebaceous. And I have sweat. And fancy name for that is, oh brother, sudoriferous, like odor, sudoriferous. Okay, so that's kind of the dermis. I don't really have too much to say. I know it's only 7 minutes in and I'm done talking about that. But we are going to talk about the pigments. Where does skin get its color? Sources of skin color. There's 3 main sources of skin color. We've already talked about one, and that is the melanocytes in my basal layer. So this is all just the epidermis. All right, here we go. This is saying epidermis here. And in this basal layer is where I will find these lovely little melanocytes. Ah, hey you. Injecting color. Shoot. This is the bad part of recording on a Sunday when there's all these people at the house trying to build a little cabin in the woods. Okay, so melanocytes, you're born with them. If you're an albino, you're not born with them. Guys, I'm moving on before I dig myself a hole. You have hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a pigment in the red blood cells, and this is what gives your skin this pink hue. It's the blood supply, but it's really the blood supply of the hemoglobin and when it's bound to oxygen, okay? That's really important. When it's bound to oxygen, it gets you this pink hue in your skin, right? If you're embarrassed, like I almost was, my face would, oh my gosh, like flush, right? I would get very red in the face of all this blood going to my face. So there's 3 sources here. One, second is hemoglobin. The third is keratin. Ooh, keratin is a pigment from foods, right? Beta carotene, like tomatoes and carrots, obviously. But it's in your foods. And it gets dumped and it hangs out in your epidermis and in your adipose of your hypodermis. And I never really thought that this was that big of a deal until we met our one friend and he was orange. And I was like, Jay, you're orange. And he's like, yeah, it's my new diet. I'm trying to work out and eat a lot of tomato paste. And I'm like, I think you're eating quite a bit because you're orange. Like a Oompa Loompa from the original Charlie Chocolate Factory. I think they were orangey, but yeah. So carotene is coming from foods. Now, here's what I want to point out about this word. We already had a word, and it was keratin. Keratin is the waxy substance made by the epidermal cells. Do not confuse that. This is different. I'm trying to point it out. Carotene is coming from foods. Okay, those are your three main sources. And, oh look, here's albinism. Absence of pigment, and therefore your melanin is a little bit messed up. It's a genetic. Congenital means it's a genetic disorder. And then you have, I don't know how to say this, but this is interesting, and this is a lot more common than I thought, vitiligo, where you have patches of skin that don't have any pigment. Some sort of autoimmune disorder, but those areas don't make pigment, and it's common in a lot more people than you think it is. But you can use skin color to see if somebody's looking, something's wrong. If you look kind of bluish, you have low oxygenation. The hemoglobin is lacking oxygen, right? So when you do surgery, they're not allowed to have fingernail polish so they can check your circulation in your fingers. If they go blue or there's no capillary refill, then there's a problem. If you're flush, who knows? You can be very pale due to low blood pressure. You can look kind of yellow, have jaundice. That is a liver disorder. Bronzing. No, bronzing is Addison's disorder. That is of the adrenal gland. Disorder. Adrenal glands are in your kidneys, and then of course there's bruising. So then we have the hypodermis. If you're getting a hypodermic needle or a sub-Q injection, that is going in past the subcutaneous layer, which is the bottommost layer of your skin, and that is adipose tissue. So you want to have a good layer of this adipose tissue down here, because if you're lacking it, you're going to be cold. You're going to lose a lot of heat. Your body's going to struggle to manage its body temperature because it typically is going to be cooler than 98.6 outside of your body. So when you get old, older folk like me, I don't know if this is true, but our adipose tissue thins. So you know what that means? We're always cold. That's why they don't have it. Our skin gets very thin. We lose elasticity, those elastic fibers in the dermis, the collagen fibers for strength, and it makes us be wrinkly. It makes our skin be like paper. Oh, paper thin skin. I mean, I used to draw blood as a phlebotomist. And, sometimes you would just put a needle in an elderly person's arm and their skin would just tear because it's lost all of its elasticity and its strength to stay together. So I am going to stop there. Why not?